Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something pretty fascinating, a framework called Das Glasprofil, or the glass profile.
hmm
And this isn't just, abstract theory. It's described as a kind of blueprint for understanding a very specific, often quiet struggle.
Exactly. The struggle that, well, frankly, holds up a lot of modern wealthy societies.
hmm
Our source material digs into this profile to look at a population that's often overlooked.
Right.
We're talking about labor migrants, people moving from, say, economically weaker regions, maybe Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, into richer countries like Germany or Switzerland.
So our mission today is really to unpack that, to understand this sort of shared genetic code, as the sources put it, that links these individuals under, well, intense structural pressure.
And how that code then manifests in, I think, 5 quite distinct survival strategies.
And ultimately, what this tells us about bigger things like choice, suffering, maybe even authenticity. It's about seeing the unseen work and the huge internal cost.
Yeah, the cost of structural inequality, basically. And that shared foundation, the starting point for everyone in this class profile. It's purely socioeconomic. Migration isn't a choice, like picking a vacation spot.
No, it's driven by necessity, isn't it? Supporting family back home, maybe paying off debts, or just there's no future where they are.
Absolutely. And then they arrive, and the work context is almost always the same kind of thing. Physically demanding, often low status, sometimes dangerous jobs.
You mean construction, cleaning, factory work, care work, that kind of thing.
Precisely. The essential jobs that, keep wealthy societies running smoothly,
Yeah.
but maybe don't get a lot of recognition.
And the person themselves exists in this difficult space, this gray zone, the sources call it.
Exactly. It's this constant tension. On one hand, this huge ambition, this hope for a better life.
Yeah.
On the other, the daily reality of feeling overlooked, maybe exploited, always like an outsider.
That structural tension, hope versus reality, that's the baseline.
That's the constant emotional backdrop. It sets the parameters for everyone we're going to talk about.
Okay, so if you're trying to map that kind of internal, quiet struggle, the usual dramatic structures don't really work, do they?
Right. Our sources realized pretty quickly they had to ditch the standard Western playbook, the one that relies on big external conflicts.
Because the main conflict here is internal and structural.
Exactly. So you can't just script a Hollywood explosion to resolve it. Wouldn't make sense.
So what did they do? Where did they look for inspiration?
Well, interestingly, they turned to East Asia, specifically Japan. They borrowed 2 key storytelling structures that are, frankly, much better at handling complexity, multiple viewpoints, and subtlety.
Okay, Japanese structures, that's an interesting term. Why those specifically?
They needed something that could focus on observation and internal shifts rather than just conflict.
Yeah.
The first one is called Kishinketsu.
Kishinketsu, okay.
It's a 4-part structure.
Yeah.
Introduction, development, turn, and conclusion. But the key part is the turn. It doesn't have to be a big fight or
It
confrontation.
can be smaller, more internal.
Yeah, like an internal realization, a subtle change in perspective.
Yeah.
It lets the story flow, organically without needing one big villain or a massive climax in the traditional sense.
Okay, so Kishinketsu provides the underlying rhythm for one person's journey. What about the second structure?
That's the Rashomon effect. If Kishinketsu is the individual track, Rashomon is like the mixing desk, bringing multiple tracks together.
I know that one. From the Kurosawa film, right. Different
No.
people witnessing the same event, but remembering it completely differently.
Exactly that. It highlights how subjective perception totally shapes what we think of as truth. And for the glass profile, well, it's perfect.
How so?
Think about it. You might have several characters working on the same, let's say, dangerous construction site, but
Yeah.
for one person, the optimist, maybe it represents hope, progress.
Okay.
For another, like the invisible, it's purely a place for camouflage, maybe even a source of fear. Same place, totally different experiences.
So the framework uses both. Kishinketsu for individual arcs, and Rashomon for how their stories intersect.
Precisely. It aims for what the sources call an organic Japanese-inspired dramaturgy. It keeps the focus internal on their states of being, not just what they do.
Got it. So within that shared experience, that core pressure, the profile then kind of fragments into different types.
Exactly. It breaks down into 5 distinct archetypes. But the crucial thing here is that they're described as flowing archetypes.
Flowing, meaning they aren't rigid boxes.
Not at all. These aren't static personality types. They're more like different frequencies,
Hmm.
different strategies for coping, for surviving within that shared profile.
So someone could change over time.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
sources stress this. The person who arrives full of hope, the optimist, might, after years of grind and maybe disappointment, shift into becoming the nostalgic, someone living in the past. It's dynamic.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's dive into these 5 then. Where should we start?
Let's start with Derangakama. That translates to the arrived.
The arrived.
Okay.
What defines them?
This figure represents adaptation as a form of intelligence. They've learned the language, maybe quite well. They understand the bureaucracy, the cultural codes. They seem to fit in.
But there's a but, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. The tension is huge.
Mm.
It's often based on internal self-denial. They might be highly functional on the outside, but inside, they still feel like a guest.
Yeah.
Or they feel perpetually caught between two lives.
That sounds exhausting, constantly performing a rival.
It is. The source material points to a symbolic element, Lee's melancholy, a quiet melancholy. Think of their apartment. It might be perfectly clean, very functional, but maybe lacking personal, spontaneous touches. Few photos. It reflects this sort of controlled sadness.
Your quiet sadness. Okay, who's next?
Next is the Unsichtbar, the invisible.
Invisible, that sounds bleak.
It is, in a way.
Yeah.
For this figure, the primary survival strategy is, well, non-attention. Camouflage.
How does that work?
They work quietly. They keep their head down. They actively try not to make mistakes because in their vulnerable position, visibility equals risk. Getting noticed could mean trouble.
So the drama isn't about what they do, but about them not being seen.
Exactly. The dramatic core, as the sources describe it, is that nobody really notices them until suddenly they're missing. Then people might realize they were there all along.
Wow. And symbolically, how are they represented?
Literally through things like reflections, silhouettes, maybe just showing their hands doing work.
Mm-hmm.
Their face is often obscured or just not the focus. They occupy the edges of the frame.
Okay, that's powerful. Number 3.
Number 3 is the trickster. This one's fascinating. They're called the Überlebenskünstler, the survival artist.
A survival artist. What does that mean?
They're savvy. They know the system, but specifically they know its loopholes, its gray zones. They might play with identities, bend the rules a bit. Often they're quite charming, quite clever.
Okay. But the source material mentions things like using loopholes, maybe even false documents. Doesn't that cross a line into, well, being a villain?
That's the complex point the sources make.
Yeah.
They argue strongly that the trickster is neither victim nor villain, in a simple sense.
How can it be?
The argument is that they use these gaps, these gray areas, because structurally, those are the only tools or points of leverage available to them. The system itself forces them into these strategies.
So it's a product of circumstance, not inherent character.
That's the perspective offered, yes. Their symbols reflect this duality and movement, things like broken mirror reflections, quick money transfers, maybe a sense of irony. They navigate the system in ways that strict rule followers can't. It's urban, quick, adaptable.
Okay, a complex figure. Who is number 4?
Fourth is Der Nostalgiker, the nostalgic.
Ah, the one who might have been the optimist before?
Possibly, yes. Or they might have always carried this trait. For the nostalgic, the core tension is their body is here in the new country, but their soul, their heart, is still back home.
Living in memories.
Deeply. They're often described as being torn by Heimweh, this profound, almost physical homesickness. They become keepers of the past for their community. The ones who remember the old songs, the recipes, the stories.
A preserver of culture, but maybe stuck.
Exactly. There's a paralysis there. The tone associated with them is often poetic, sentimental, and their symbols are very personal, very evocative. Old photographs, specific music from home, maybe a particular plant from their homeland that they're carefully tending in a foreign apartment.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, and a 5th one?
The 5th and final archetype is the optimist.
The one driven by hope.
Yes, but it's a double-edged sword. Hope is their engine, absolutely. They're often charismatic, friendly, always talking about the future. Just 2 more years and we'll buy that piece of land, or soon I'll bring my family over.
But you said it's double-edged.
Because that hope can also function as an illusion. Underneath the cheerful exterior, they're often incredibly tired, running on fumes, living right on the edge of complete burnout.
So their faith is both their strength and their biggest risk.
Precisely. The risk is that they exhaust themselves chasing a dream that the structure they're in might never actually allow them to reach. Their symbolic elements are things like the sunrise, constant activity, like a construction site that's always developing.
But maybe never quite finished.
Exactly. There's a brightness, a rhythm, but also something inherently tragic comic about their relentless forward push against difficult odds.
Okay, so we have these 5 archetypes: the arrived, the invisible, the trickster, the nostalgic, the optimist, all variations within the same core glass profile.
Mm,
So the real tension, the core drama, isn't necessarily one big event, but this constant internal swinging back and forth.
that's what the sources argue, yes.
Yeah.
That quiet internal pendulum swing.
Mhm.
Will I actually arrive, become whole here, or will I just function? Will anyone see the effort, the sacrifice, or will it remain silent, invisible?
And the audience watching or reading about these figures is left in the state of emotional uncertainty about the outcome.
Exactly. That uncertainty is the core tension.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at figures like the optimist, constantly pushing, constantly near burnout. It forces a really difficult, almost philosophical question.
Which is,
How much of any of this is really chosen?
ah, this gets deep. It challenges that whole idea of willing, of wanting, or willpower.
It does. The sources really push on this. Are these roles we end up in, whether it's a migrant worker or, frankly, even a manager in a corporation, are they truly chosen? Or are they, as one source rather starkly puts it, products of a cruelty called reality?
Meaning the world shapes us before we even know we're being shaped.
Pretty much. That the structures we're born into or migrate into kind of predetermine the paths available.
And this leads to thinking about masks.
Yeah, the mask we wear to fit in, to function. The role society demands, be it the grateful guest, the tireless worker, the compliant employee. The uncomfortable truth the sources raise is that sometimes that mask fits pretty well.
We get used to it.
We get so good at the performance we almost forget we're wearing it. We only notice the strain, the underlying sadness or exhaustion in those quiet moments when the performance stops. Sometimes, maybe the performance is just easier than facing the raw truth underneath.
Wow. Okay. So this reflection on masks, on choice, it brings us to the final and maybe the deepest part of this framework, the idea of healing.
Yes, the concept of healing. We all want it, right? We want closure, resolution for pain. But the sources here introduce a really challenging idea.
What's that?
They question whether our desire for healing is sometimes, well, just a more sophisticated way of avoiding the truth, a way of suppressing what's difficult.
So wanting to heal could be wanting to stop looking.
That's the provocative suggestion, just another word for not having to look anymore. It fundamentally challenges the notion that deep existential pain, the kind that comes from seeing the world's unfairness, its cruelty, the kind the glass profile surfaces, is some kind of defect.
That it's not a sickness to be cured by therapy.
Exactly. The argument flips it. What if that pain, that awareness of the world's harsh realities, isn't sickness but consciousness itself?
Consciousness hurts because it sees clearly.
That's the difficult core of it.
Yeah.
Seeing the truth of the structure, the inequality, the compromises. That awareness is painful.
Yeah.
It's the bitter, honest truth the glass profile ultimately reveals about these lives.
So where does that leave us? If therapy can't cure consciousness,
Well, the sources make a distinction. A therapist, a psychiatrist, they can absolutely help someone survive the night. They can provide support, tools, stability when things feel overwhelming. They bring light into dark rooms.
what?
But they can't stop the night from existing. They can't fundamentally change the human condition or the structures that cause the pain. The pain isn't necessarily a mistake to be corrected. It's a symptom of being awake, of seeing clearly.
So maybe some wounds shouldn't close or can't close.
That's the startling insight, yes.
Yeah.
That maybe some wounds shouldn't fully close. Maybe they need to remain as reminders. Reminders that we feel, that we're live, that we are capable of seeing the world as it is, flaws and all.
Okay, so wrapping this up. The glass profile describes this quiet, intense world where just surviving is an art, a constant balancing act between hope, trying to adapt, and this risk of internal dissolution.
Exactly. And the journey through understanding it doesn't end with a neat solution or a cure. It ends really with facing a profound truth.
And that truth is,
If the pain you carry, the pain revealed by this kind of deep look, isn't a mistake, if it's actually a sign of being conscious, then the way forward isn't really healing in the sense of making the pain disappear.
it's not about solving the problem.
No. It's more about truth, about acceptance, recognizing the pain for what it is.
You can't heal what's part of being human, part of facing reality.
That seems to be the ultimate point. Maybe the only real kind of peace available isn't eliminating the pain, but stopping the fight against it, letting it be recognized,
And transforming.
transforming it into a scar. A scar doesn't mean you're broken. It means you endured, you felt, you lived through something. It's a mark that reminds you that you are human, whole in your imperfection, and connected to others in that shared state of being, well, fundamentally unsolved.
So moving forward isn't about being fixed, but about resilience, about being human despite it all.
That's the powerful takeaway. Learning to carry the scar, learning resilience, learning to be human in a world that is often deeply painful.
A really profound thought to end on. Transforming pain into a scar of recognition of shared humanity. Thank you for joining this deep dive.